Discard is getting a new toy.
Did you say this card?
No, discard.
That card?
I hate you.
Is it worth it?
What's up, nerds? You know the drill, mechanics, the good, the bad, potential deck list, and my recommendation on whether or not you should get Proxima Midnight. Let's go. Proxima Midnight is a 4 energy 7 power card that reads, when this is discarded, jumps to your lowest power location that isn't full. Overall impressions. How is this not good? I don't know. Discard has always happily run Wolverine in pretty much all the lists, and essentially it's Proxima Midnight, sorta, except it's free 4 power, but now it's 7. Honestly, I think you have to nitpick pretty hard to find any fault with this card, really. That card? Shut up. Alright, some of the mechanics of how Proxima Midnight actually functions in the game. So the first thing here is that her lowest power clause will be figured out before she actually triggers. And that just means the game is going to look at the board, figure out your lowest power location, and then she's going to flip there. It doesn't mean what your lowest power location would be after she flips there. The next thing is if there is a tie in 2 locations, it's a coin flip. And then the next thing is in regards to Hela. I see people talking about playing this card with Hela, and sure, why not? It's a free 7 power. But just know that if you play Proxima in Hela decks, Hela's not going to bring it back. Much like Apocalypse and Wolverine, when those cards are discarded, they either go back in your hand, like the case of Apocalypse, or they flip onto the board. So they didn't go anywhere, except for where the card was supposed to go.
I'm like a smart person.
And then the last thing, I have miniaturized lab here because I couldn't think or find of any other locations where Proxima Midnight wouldn't go into. So Proxima Midnight is great for locations like Sanctum Sanctorum or Desdomain or Altar of Death or a stormed location. She can get in all of those even if you can't play it there because she says jump to the location. You're not actually playing the card there. So unless the location or the effect says cards can't be played here, then she's liable to be able to go to that location. And the only things I can come up with is Miniaturized Lab and a Professor X lane. Those say cards can't be added. So yeah. Alright, what are some of the benefits of Proxima, the good stuff about her? Well, aside from all of it, the first thing we have here is free power. Now, it cannot be overstated how good free power in any card game is, really. When something costs 0, but you still get a benefit from it, that's awesome. And 7 power ain't nothing to sneeze at. The second thing is unplayable locations, or cards, locations you couldn't get into. So Proxima Midnight does say it jumps to the lowest power location, and usually if there's a location on the board that you can't get into, that'll be your lowest power location. So yeah, I've heard some people be like, oh, what about Bar with No Name? That's the only location where it's a downside. Every other scenario, she's gonna get in there. Well, I guess the Space Throne would be a bad location for her to jump to. But aside from that, Proxima Midnight is discard's best way of playing around location variants. The third point here is she's a forever staple. Unless I am so off base with this, which I don't think I am, Proxima Midnight is going to be a staple in any discard, non-Hela discard deck that is ever created in the total history of this game, which is a benefit. A card that you can confidently pick up and say, well, this is always going to have a home. It's probably never going to get power crept. It's an upside. And the last thing here is discard critical mass. And what I mean by this is discard, if America Chavez didn't get nerfed, I think discard would be at critical mass of just good cards to where it's a solid meta contender. But ever since that nerf, discard got, it got knocked down a couple of pegs. But now with Proxima Midnight, discard is sort of like where destroy is, where the amount of flexible slots in that deck is getting very small, and you almost have the perfect 12 cards. And when a deck like Deadpool Destroy is showing right now, when a deck is so tight and those cards that go in that deck are figured out, it's really when that deck is at peak power. And I think that's where discard is now, thanks to Proxima Midnight. Alright, on to the bad. I stretched a little bit on this segment, alright? The first thing is you can't control it. Now, yeah, I mean, that's technically a downside. It's power that you can't dictate where it goes on the board. I mean, you can a little bit, I guess, by like filling up locations or just playing a little tricky. You can dictate where Proxima Midnight's going to flip on the board, but in general, she's going to be harder to control than pretty much all the other cards that you're going to play. The second thing here is 0 versatility. That's usually the case with cards that are like very good. They're also not versatile, because if they were versatile, then they would be busted and the best cards in the game. Well, that's what you get with Proxima Midnight. She's ever only going in one archetype, ever, forever. So that means she's not very versatile. So if you pick up Proxima Midnight, it's not like you're gonna be putting her in a bunch of different meta decks. It's not happening. And technically, that is the downside. All right, on to an example deck list. So this version of discard is what I was talking about earlier. I think there's going to be 2 versions of Apocalypse discard moving forward. One version I can see running Collector, where Wolverine is in this position, and Helicarrier for one of the other cards, maybe Dracula, I don't know. But those versions and this version, I think, are going to be the 2 type of Apocalypse discard decks you can expect to see moving forward. This version just looks to use Wolverine and Proxima and Swarms for a bunch of free power, paired with Meek and Morbius and Dracula and Apocalypse to get that big power. So this deck's going to be able to go wide very easily on turn 6, and it can go really tall. Also, I think Proxima Midnight with Dracula is actually good. I've heard some people be like, oh, it's kind of sucks with Dracula. I disagree. At the end of the game, you can just discard Proxima Midnight with the Dracula. It'll be an extra 7 power on Dracula, plus it'll flip to somewhere on the board. That's awesome. I actually think Proxima Midnight makes Dracula better than it was before, even though I've heard a lot of creators and people saying the exact opposite. I don't know. Alright, on to my recommendation on whether or not you should spend keys or tokens on Proxima Midnight. So I think for Spotlight caches and using your keys, this is actually pretty simple. If you don't have MODOK, then absolutely open for Proxima Midnight, because I don't think you should play Proxima Midnight without MODOK in your deck. Dokken is sort of, it's whatever. Dokken's sort of that like filler card in discard decks where I don't think they're that much better with him, and I don't think they're that much worse without him. It's a whatever card, really. Now, as far as tokens go, this is way more tricky, because I'm assuming you already have Dokken and MODOK, which you really should. There are 2 season pass cards. So that makes spending 6k tokens on a card like Proxima Midnight a little tricky, because, well, she only goes in one deck, like I said earlier. That's a little rough, I'm not gonna lie. Spending 6k tokens on the least versatile card we've seen in a long time is a little rough, but I think she's so good for discard archetypes that if you want to play discard whatsoever, I think you gotta buy Proxima for tokens. Just bite the bullet. And that's my review of Proxima Midnight. To summarize real quick, I can't see anything wrong with the card, really. Even the downsides people talk about just really end up being upsides. And the only weirdness about her is the fact that you gotta spend 6k tokens or some Spotlight keys on a card that goes in one deck. But I think she's going to be the X23 of discard. She's going to be the Electro of ramp decks. I think she's going to be a forever staple, so buy with confidence. Thanks for watching. Check out me and Prashan. He's another YouTube creator, great guy. We started a podcast together. It's called About to Snap. You can find it on Spotify and on this channel as well. We'll be alternating uploads between his channel and my channel, but if you just want to listen to it, the audio version is available on Spotify. It's also called About to Snap. Duh. That's it though. See you in the next video. Later, nerds.